Hi guys, welcome to this feature of Platinum Tech. Today we're going to be going through what it takes to actually physically snap or break a 2J block. If you haven't already seen our 2J versus RB comparison, you better check up on that one first. And today we're going to go through and show you how these banana peel or snap as we go through and show you three separate scenarios. This is a gas racing prime example of how much a 2J block will take before splitting open. Now this is just your standard 220 mile, low 6-second pass 2J, grout filled. 75 psi is about the limit of what these blocks take, and it could be 76 psi or 77 psi, but ultimately they start failing at around here. So rather than tell you why it failed, we know cylinder pressure caused the explosion. But was there a thin spot in a bore that started the chain reaction that ended up splitting this bore open? Absolutely. Would it have helped? Would it have gained another 2 psi or another 2 miles an hour? Would it have got it into the high fives? Well, potentially. There's a small section of bore here which does seem about an inch down from the top, which is it around, and I don't actually need to sonic test this because I can, for the first time ever, get to it with a set of verniers, but you can see it about an inch down. It's about a 5.5 mil bore. Now that's usually typically fairly thin for a JZ. In that area, we usually see a consistent 7 millimeters. So yeah, this block did very well. You're talking a lot of power, 6.3 second quarter mile. The thing was moving. It was always going to blow, but would it have lasted an extra couple of PSI? Well, possibly. We've learnt from gas racing that 75 PSI is about the limit. You could maybe make it 80 PSI, but that's it. It was never going to last, and this is about as far as we can get with a cast block. Grout filled, all the bells and whistles, that's it. So after spending a bit of time analysing this block, we can only assume that the thin point was the weakest link. It started to balloon out from the centre of the block here and peel open, but the force of that whole side of the block pulling away from the parent material there was so great that it's actually snapped between every bore the whole way round. You'll see in the overlay, it's actually tried to part the block in two. Funny thing about it, the rotating assembly was still intact. It didn't punch a hole through any of the side of the block, the webbing, and it's just an amazing result to see this sort of carnage. Awesome. Just surprising to see that at this level of racing, it's not a matter of if, it's when it's going to fail. It's just surprising to see 220 mile an hour, low 6-second pass, almost a 5-second pass before you need to upgrade to a billet block. It's pretty outstanding. Here we've got another gas racing block. This is more of a street race type application. It's got no grout in it. So we're going to have a look at why this one potentially let go. It's obviously some sort of a lean out or detonation or both, but you can see the whole cylinder wall has completely given way, and we've got a horseshoe crack from the top of one side all the way to the other, and it's pushed the bore out of the way. So what has caused that? Heat, obviously, detonation, but was there an inconsistency in the bore on this one? Why did none of the other ones let go at the same time? Did an injector fail? Who knows? We don't have that information in front of us. All we can do is check the actual block casting. And here, after a bit of poking around, I realised that we've got an inconsistency on one side of the crack to the other. We've got 7.5 mil on one side of the crack, and then I can move over just a little bit, and I've got just under 6.5 mil. So we've got a millimetre's worth of step between one part of the bore and the next part, which has obviously caused a fault line there. It's a weak point, and that's where it's decided to start tearing away. That's where the most damage happened. Could it have lasted if it didn't have that step? Maybe a little bit longer. Would it have done so much damage? Would the bore have given way? Well, maybe not. Who knows? But there's a real good indication of why it failed and where it failed at that specific point to cause its chain reaction to blow the whole cylinder wall out. So although this little inconsistency doesn't really mean a lot in the grand scheme of things, still make 800 horsepower, still make 1,000 horsepower, but will that little inconsistency make a big difference at 1,500 or 1,800 horsepower? Well, absolutely. Now, you don't usually test JZ blocks. We don't get given a lot of blocks to test because they are so consistent, and usually they are really consistent. But in this one, for example, that would have come up in a sonic test, and it would have at that point given you enough resource data information to steer away from this particular block because it did have a weak point. And this is something that's commonly overlooked, but if you're going to go and spend $50,000, $100,000 on an engine setup, you can avoid a potential problem by narrowing down the risks with the little problems that you might get. It'll ultimately cause you a very big problem. So you could avoid it and steer yourself into a better quality block to begin with. Now, my favorite broken 2J is Ryan Samut's block RSR. This is a very fast 2J, was mid 7-second quarter mile, solid mounted block, doing wheelies like there's no tomorrow, and it was coming down so hard that we figure it stress cracked the block in a few places. The next run, it completely snapped in half. Now, it's just an awesome indication of how you can snap a JZ. Wasn't cylinder pressure, none of it helped, and it might have been on its last legs already, but there was no actual window in a block where a rod snapped and poked out. This completely snapped the block and then caused a bit of a chain reaction and damaged everything else. But goes to show you how much damage you can do to a solid mounted cast engine by bouncing it up and down the drag strip. Well done, Ryan. So if there wasn't wheelies causing this drama, we would see some sort of evidence elsewhere. There's nothing really other than some exposed methanol burn after the fact. Who knows? It's hard to tell. It all happened really quickly, but you could just tell it was a massive mess on the day, and we've got the broken bits to prove as a trophy. You've seen how hard it is to destroy a JZ block. It's not easy and it's not cheap to do. But in another video, we show you how easy it is to destroy an RB block. We're going to show you how they crack, where they crack, and how to prevent them cracking. Please subscribe to our channel to make sure you don't miss it.